Alright, hey guys, the Ultimate Freezer here, and welcome to my top 6 video games of 2015 video. Now, if you're a new subscriber to my channel, then this is kind of like an annual thing I do at the end of every year. And if you've been a subscriber to my channel for a while, you'll see that I have done 2 annual videos of this. Top video games of 2013 and a top video games list of 2014. And this year is no exception. As I said at the start of the video, it's going to be a top 6 list of my favourite games. That might seem like a little bit of a weird number, but in terms of what I've played this year, I can only really pick out 6 games that I've truly enjoyed this year. So we're going to get straight onto the video, starting out with 6th place. Now, the Mortal Kombat franchise is a game series that I've not kept up to date with for quite a few years prior to this game. Now, I did own the original Mortal Kombat back in the early days of the Mega Drive, and I absolutely loved it. And I proceeded to buy all the releases following that, such as Mortal Kombat 2, 3, Trilogy, and then all the way up to Mortal Kombat Gold on the Dreamcast. And then after that, I kind of drifted away from the series. I don't really know why. I guess my interest kind of diminished for it quite a bit. I did play Mortal Kombat vs DC Universe, which I thought was an okay game. It wasn't that bad. Wasn't too happy that they toned the violence down for that game. But then we've had Mortal Kombat X, and after seeing videos for this online prior to the game's release, I was very happy that they brought the gore back. And boy, have they brought the gore back. The fatalities on this game are absolutely mental. Kind of reminiscent of sort of like the Saw franchise deaths. Some of them, it's just really over the top, which isn't a bad thing, because that's kind of what Mortal Kombat's known for, being ridiculously over the top fatalities. Putting that aside, it's actually a really good looking game for graphics, and the fighting mechanics are pretty easy to pick up. The fatalities themselves are a little bit tricky to pull off, but if you really wanted to, you could actually unlock the fatalities online. You can buy it on either PSN or Xbox Live. But no, I was really impressed with this new Mortal Kombat. The story mode's okay. It didn't really hold much of my interest, but I did play through it. But at the end of the day, you're not buying a Mortal Kombat game for the story mode. But yeah, it's brought some new interesting characters into the series, as well as bringing obviously some of your classic ones back, such as Sub-Zero, Scorpion and Raiden. But yeah, if you like a fighting game with crazily over-the-top gore, then I would definitely recommend this. And I've noticed they've got some DLC out for it now, where you can actually play as Predator and Jason from the Friday the 13th horror series, which is a nice touch. Coming in at 5th place, I have WWE 2K16. Now, this is another game series I've kind of been on and off with over the years. Now, I did have last year's WWE 2K15, and I was extremely disappointed with it. In fact, I ended up trading the game in after only owning it for a couple of days. The game modes had literally been stripped bare, as well as some of the match types. The graphics weren't particularly that great, and the fighting mechanism was extremely flawed. Thankfully, this year's 2K16 is a huge improvement over last year's game. We've had a lot of the returning modes from previous wrestling games, such as story modes, return. The graphics have had an overhaul, and the fighting mechanisms is a huge improvement. So the biggest inclusion to WWE 2K16 is the career mode, which is only available on the next-gen systems, in case you're curious. And basically you have to create a wrestler, which I was a little bit disappointed with at first, because I just really wanted to play as a wrestler and progress. But once I got into it a little bit, I actually found myself quite enjoying it. So you create your wrestler, and you basically start at the very, very bottom of WWE. In fact, you start at the developmental process. Then you work your way through NXT. Once you win the NXT Championship, then you can move on to the main roster, and you can challenge for any championship you want, such as WWE Championship, United States, or even you can get a tag team partner and go for the tag team championships. And I really found myself quite addicted to this mode once I got into it. It very much felt like I was playing the story mode for SmackDown Here Comes the Pain from the PlayStation 2, which is actually my favourite wrestling game. Not as in-depth as SmackDown Here Comes the Pain. You might think that sounds a bit weird, but it's not. But it's enjoyable. I do like how, as you're progressing through the game and you get multiple choice questions come up when you're in interviews, you can either choose to answer them as a face or a heel. Some of the cutscenes do get a little bit repetitive. I found myself watching the same cutscenes popping up quite often. But overall, I was quite happy with the story mode for this game. The graphics are pretty good for the game. I said they are an improvement over last year's, and they definitely are. Some wrestlers do look better than others. However, some do look pretty poor still. When you're getting interviewed by Renee Young, she looks like a cardboard cutout. That's always a good thing, right? You've got a 2K showcase mode on this game featuring the cover star Stone Cold Steve Austin. And you basically play as Stone Cold through some of his famous rivalries over wrestling, basically, such as Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Triple H, etc. So overall, this is a huge improvement over last year's game. It sort of feels like 2K was just starting to get to grips with the new gen hardware last year, and now they've kind of got more of a feel for it. They've released us a much more polished wrestling game. The fighting mechanisms are a little bit like, it's not for everyone. It's not really has an arcadey feel anymore compared to the old wrestling games. When I say arcadey, I mean some of the new wrestling mechanics in here are sort of a little bit like a mini game. Think rock, paper, scissors. So when you're in a submission move, you have to press certain buttons to get out of it, or if you're doing a submission, you have to press certain buttons to increase the submission. It took a little bit of time for me to get used to, because I wasn't entirely really used to that. The pinning mechanism took me a little bit of time to get used to also. In the old games, when you get pinned, usually you hammer the buttons down until your guy kicks out. On this game, you have to only press one button once, and you have to line it when the referee counts to match to the icon, match it up, press it, and then you'll kick out. As the match goes along and you're getting hurt, it's harder to align them up, so it can be a little bit tricky, and I found myself losing a couple of matches sillily, even after only getting pinned once, but definitely picking up now. So if you've been skipping some of the more recent wrestling games, then this one is definitely worth checking out. I wouldn't pay full price for it. I'd wait for it to drop to maybe 20-30. I look forward to see what 2K are going to do for next year's one, and hopefully they continue on this streak of improving the game greatly as we progress. But for now, this is definitely an improvement and a good game. Coming in at 4th place, I have Resident Evil 1 Remaster. Now, this is essentially a remake of a remake of a remake. Now, if that sounds confusing, let me elaborate. This Resident Evil 1 Remaster is a remaster of the 2002 Resident Evil 1 that came out on the Nintendo GameCube, which is a remake of the 1996 Resident Evil 1, which came out on the PlayStation 1. So that's quite a mouthful there. Now, Resident Evil 1, which came out on the GameCube, is actually my favourite Resident Evil out of all of the ones that have been released. I'm a huge fan of the Resident Evil franchise. In fact, it's one of my top 3 favourite video game franchises of all time. And when I first played the GameCube remake, I was completely blown away. And I played the game for literally hours and hours and hours and completed it countless times. So when I found out they was doing a remaster of the game, I was instantly excited, because the GameCube version of Resident Evil hasn't had literally much love since the GameCube release, essentially. I mean, when you compare it to Resident Evil 4, that's had literally countless re-releases, whereas the GameCube Resident Evil 1, it's only literally been released on the GameCube, so this is the first time it's been released out of that. Now, I've got it on the PlayStation 4, which is obviously the superior version compared to playing it with the PlayStation 3, or if you're playing it on the Xbox 360, obviously the Xbox One is the more superior one. And I'm it's not just a HD upgrade, this game. They have improved many of the textures of the game, and I mean many. The lighting effects, the flames and the candles, it's all been updated. The character models have also been touched up as well. You can see a lot more detail on the characters now. And something I was quite happy with is that you've got the character models from Resident Evil 5's Lost in Nightmares on here, so you can play as Chris and Jill as they appear in Resident Evil 5's Lost in Nightmares. I would have liked if they had have added Albert Wesker's Albert Wesker's Resident Evil 5 model also, but you can't have it always. If you've never played this game, then I would really recommend picking it up. I mean, if you're a fan of horror in general, then this is a fantastic game, and it's a game that really makes you think and really makes you work to progress into this game. If you're playing it on more of the harder difficulties, really be careful with the ammunition you've got and just how you're playing the game. And there's, I think, out of all the Resident Evils that have been released, this is the one that's got the most different endings. There's something like 10 different endings if you compare like Chris and Jill's combined. So if you keep that in mind, there's many characters you can save throughout the game which will impact how you play through and make your story easier to play through, such as obtaining weapons. So yes, that is Resident Evil 1 Remaster coming in at 4th.
There are only 3 STARS members left now. Captain Wesker, Barry, and myself.
Coming in at 3rd place, I have Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition. Now, you might be able to tell that this list contains yet another re-released Special Edition game, but that's not a bad thing because these games are fantastic, and Devil May Cry 4 is no exception. Now, the Devil May Cry series is another franchise that I'm a huge fan of, with the exception of the rotten reboot we had a few years back with Ninja Theory. To me, the last good Devil May Cry game was Devil May Cry 4, which came out amazingly all the way back in 2007. So this is a special edition version released in 2015. Now, there's a reason that I've got Devil May Cry 4 Special Edition in front of the Resident Evil 1 Remaster. That's quite a mouthful again. And that is because not only have they touched up the graphics and textures for Devil May Cry 4, they have added a wealth of new modes and playable characters to the game. And it's not just like they've added an extra skin to Dante where you play as Dante but you've got a different costume and it's the same moves. It is literally brand new characters for Devil May Cry 4 to play as. If you think, if you're a Devil May Cry fan, if you think of the special edition that Devil May Cry 3 had, whereas you played as Virgil and you progressed, although you did the same missions as Dante, it was a completely different character and style you played as, and you had brand new cutscenes for the game. That is essentially what we've got here, and even more. You do have Virgil on this game. In fact, as you're playing as him, it's actually set a few decades before the timeline of Devil May Cry 4, which explains why he is in the same clothing and he looks the same as he does from Devil May Cry 3, which is why he looks really young, which is something I didn't understand at first when I was watching the cutscenes. And he is a beast of a character to play as. He is extremely powerful, and he contains his complete moveset that he did have from Devil May Cry 3, such as the Beowulf. And as Devil May Cry 3 Special Edition has, this game has brand new cutscenes for Virgil, which look absolutely gorgeous. So not only do we get to play as Virgil, we also get to play as Lady and Trish, who you play as simultaneously, sort of a bit like how Dante and Nero go through their story. Now this is very much a welcome addition to the game, because we haven't really seen much of Lady since Devil May Cry 3. Now I know she makes a little bit of a brief appearance in one of the cutscenes on Devil May Cry 4, but that is essentially it. So it's great to be able to play as her now, and it's great to be able to play as Trish again, who we haven't been able to play as since Devil May Cry 2, who wasn't unlockable anyway. I mean, she wasn't even a part of the story mode of Devil May Cry 2. So this is all very much welcome additions to the game, and they both play very much differently and uniquely compared to Dante. It's not literally you're playing as the same moveset. It's really good. It really feels like Capcom have put a lot of effort into this game, as opposed to just releasing the same game and just slapping a HD update on it. This is definitely a special edition, and if you're a fan of the Devil May Cry franchise and you've played Devil May Cry 4, then I would really recommend picking this up and playing through it again. And hopefully, fingers crossed, Capcom actually finish carrying on with this franchise and we just forget about that horrible DMC game that came out a couple of years ago.
The Order of the Sword, huh?
Next time on Revelations 2.
Coming down to the final two games on my list now, in second place is Resident Evil Revelations 2. Now, we've actually had 3 Capcom games in a row here, which wasn't actually planned. In fact, Revelations 2 came very close to being first on my list, had it not been for the release of the game, which will be earning first place. But anyway, on to Revelations 2. I am a very much fan of this game, obviously, for the fact that it's made second place on my list. Now, I was a very big fan of the first Revelations game that came out a couple of years back, and I was very excited to hear that they was making a sequel to the game. Now, I'm going to say straight off the bat, Revelations 2 is a much, much better game compared to Resident Evil 6. Even though the budget for Revelations 2 is much, much lower compared to what Resident Evil 6 had. And it does kind of show on Revelations 2 because the graphics for the game aren't exactly brilliant. There's some areas of the game where it looks like an Xbox 360 game, PS3 game at best, and when you're playing this on the PS4 it is very underwhelming from a graphical standpoint. However, the gameplay on this game is absolutely fantastic, and it is a true return to the survival horror roots that the franchise basically made famous in the video game genre. You have returning characters, returning popular characters I might say, from previous games which we haven't seen for a very long time in the video games, such as Claire Redfield and Barry Burton, two very big fan favourites there. And you've also got a slice of new characters, such as Moira Burton, which is Barry Burton's daughter, who is now grown up. I mean, we heard a little bit of Barry's daughters in the first Resident Evil game. But we're in modern times now, and then Moira is now a teenager. And we've also got Natalia, who is a character that plays with Barry, who is a little girl, and you learn more about her story as you are progressing. Now, the story works as episodes. You play one episode as Claire and Moira, and then you'll play an episode with Barry and Natalia. And the story is very cleverly wrote. It really had me guessing, humming and ahhing as I was playing it, and it really made me want to sort of play more to learn what was going on and find the truth out of this story. And that's a true credit to the writers of this game. They really nailed a true tense and nail-biting story scenario. Basically, as you're playing as Moira and Claire, you complete a chapter and then you'll play as Barry and Natalia, and you're actually playing through the same area as the game. Basically, you're on an island, but you're playing 6 months after Claire and Moira weren't there, and you're sort of going around and finding clues, because basically Moira, Barry's daughter, has gone missing. And it's very cleverly done, and as you progress throughout the game you find out that there's actually a new Wesker on the game. Albert Wesker's sister, basically, you might as well say. And it's a really cool, unique twist to the Resident Evil story and timeline, and I really enjoyed it. And on top of that, you've also got a side option on the game, such as Raid Mode, which was on the first Revelations game, which is basically you can play co-op online and you can progress through various stages throughout the game. And you basically rake up points, killing zombies and monsters, and it's like a sort of level up system, and you can level up your character's abilities and guns, and it's a really addictive game, the Raid Mode. I've played many hours and ranked up completely my character. In fact, I played as Moira mostly throughout Raid Mode. You've got multiple character outfits on the game. You've also got returning characters from previous Resident Evils. In fact, you've actually got Albert Wesker on the game, which is really cool, and you've got DC Douglas reprising his role of the Albert Wesker that he made famous from Resident Evil 5, and that's always a treat to hear DC Douglas back in a role as Albert Wesker. So compared, I could not really recommend this game enough, really. You don't really necessarily need to have played any of the other Resident Evil games for you to understand what's going on. If you've never played a Resident Evil game before, you'll pick it up and it sort of explains to you as you're going through what exactly the scenarios are, and you wouldn't feel lost either way. However, if you have played all the other Resident Evil games, it's really cool to hear some of the Easter eggs, such as like Claire and Moira are talking and they'll reference previous scenarios in previous Resident Evil games. It's always a nice treat to hear those in a game. So yes, that is why Resident Evil Revelations 2 is my second top game of 2015. Okay, so my number one game of 2015 is the PS4 exclusive Until Dawn. Okay, so if I had to summarise this game with one word, I would use the word amazing. It is truly an amazing and beautiful looking game. I have not played a game before that has engaged me so much in the story and characters, probably since Mass Effect 3 came out a couple of years ago. The way the story is wrote is so engaging that you just find yourself continually playing because you want to find out exactly what is going on as the nightmare unravels around you. I mean, there's so many plot twists and turns that when you see what is going on, you're like, what? Did that just happen? For instance, when you get to, I believe it's chapter 6, when you find out who the killer is, I was shocked. I was like, it can't be him, surely. But it turns out it is. And it's sort of, once you figure that out, the game takes another extreme twist, and then you find yourself up against these demonic type creatures called Wendigos, and then it just gets even more crazier there. It is definitely one of the jumpiest games I have ever played, probably since Resident Evil 3 on the PlayStation 1 with the Nemesis, because that guy really did used to make me jump a hell of a lot back then. Obviously I was much younger back then. But today, video games don't really make me jump that much, but this game I found myself jumping sort of every 5 minutes. It's very cleverly done with how they get you to sort of look aside, the music goes quiet, and then boom, something jumps out of you. Now, in terms of graphics, this is definitely the most, well, it is the best looking graphical game I have played to date. If you really want to showcase the PlayStation 4's power, then this is the game to get and show. It looks absolutely stunning. When you look at the background sceneries of all the mountains and snow, it looks absolutely gorgeous, and you just got like things like the footprints in the snow, the breath of the coldness of the characters as they're outside. It looks incredible. The flame effects, I can't really recommend it enough. At the moment, it's if you're living in the UK, you can pick it up for I think it's half price, for £20, which is an absolute bargain. I could not really recommend this enough. I mean, I've recommended it to all the friends that I have known, and thankfully a few of them have picked it up and tried it, and they've loved it and said to me that this is definitely the best game they've played this year. In fact, one of them said this is one of the best games he's ever played, which is refreshing to hear. The gameplay, it might not be to everyone's taste. It sort of plays out if you've played Heavy Rain or maybe Beyond Two Souls. It's a bit like that. Essentially, you can't actually die as you're playing through the game. It's sort of you progress, you make choices, and then you sort of carry on from there. Determining on how you play the game determines how the story plays out. It's got such a thing called the butterfly effect, whereas you make one decision and the entire outcome of the story will change. And that is exactly what it does. You can complete the game with all of your characters alive, and you can actually complete the game with all of your characters dying, and so forth, with some living and some dying. It's really interesting, and it's really hard to complete the game with keeping all your characters alive, which I have managed to do on my third attempt, which I was very glad to do. So yeah, definitely could not recommend this game enough. You've got a PlayStation 4 and you're a fan of like horror and jumps, then you will absolutely be blown away by this. It's got really great characters in the game, and how they're wrote when you first start the game, characters that you essentially won't like, they get on your nerves, you'll end up finding yourself liking as the game progresses. You'll find yourself sort of really liking them. So yeah, #1 game this year, Until Dawn. Definitely go out and buy it. Okay guys, and that is my top games of 2015. I'd really like to hear what you guys' top games are for this year. Maybe it was a game that you didn't see on this list, or if it was a game on this list, tell me how you found playing that game. Always interesting for me to hear. Just pop it in the comments section below and I will be sure to reply to it. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching all the way to the end of this video, guys. It is very much appreciated. I'd really also appreciate a thumbs up. That really helps my channel out a lot. And once again, guys, thank you very much for subscribing and watching, and see you on next video.